This is Entrepreneurs Get Visible, the podcast for people who want more impact, influence, and income. I'm Anna Parker-Naples, and I'll be sharing with you proven methods from leading entrepreneurs that help you get visible as an authority in your field. Because anything's possible when you get visible. In today's episode of Entrepreneurs Get Visible, we're talking about the importance of consistency in your business. And I'll be introducing you to our very special guest in just a moment. But in terms of that consistency, it's really about how you show up, how you become visible, what you're telling people about what you do. And I'm holding a very special event in June, on the 20th of June 2020, and the tickets are available now. If you want to come along, we've got some incredible guest experts talking about how to improve your content, how to make sure you podcast with impact, how you get yourself in the press, and how you use video to really stand out from the crowd and nail your audience building. Because this is the thing that is key in terms of how you drive clients into your business. So if you want to find out about that, go to annaparkernaples.co.uk/get-visible-live or visit the show notes where you can just click on the link. So the person I'm speaking with today has worked with thousands of clients and created multiple streams of income for herself and helps others to do the same. She is best-selling author of the book, Is This It? The Smart Woman's Guide to Finding Work You Love. And that kind of encapsulates a lot of this lady's work. So, ladies and gentlemen, all those listeners out there, I want to welcome you to Ruth Kudzi. So, everyone, I'm really excited today to have Ruth Kudzi with me because I actually interviewed Ruth, which is the first time we met, about almost exactly 2 years to the day that it went live for my first podcast, Inspiring Mummy Club, which then became Inspiring Success. So I'm going to make sure that we get the first interview that I did with Ruth when we first met 2 years ago in the show notes. So go and have a listen to that one after this. So hello, Ruth, and welcome to Entrepreneurs Get Visible.
Thank you so much, Anna. It's great to be here. And yeah, I can't believe it is actually 2 years to the day. I really think it is.
I think it is. I think it's 2 years to the day that it went live, because it would have been late February.
Yeah.
Because I think you were maybe like the fifth or sixth interview that I did, and the show started in the January. So, well, what's interesting is that the way we connected in that instance was your VA reached out to me. I just started a mum podcast, and back then I think quite a lot of your messaging was around mums and transitioning.
It was.
And so your VA reached out to me, and I was like, okay, yeah, let's do it. And I still didn't have a clue about interviewing or how to kind of make this whole space work. And you were pretty much in your early days as well.
I was about 2 years in. So
I thought it would be nice today. Obviously, we're going to talk about the consistency it takes to build a business and to have that financial success. And not just the financial success, the profile that having consistency leads you to have. But I think it'd be really nice to really talk a little bit about our journeys, about your journey, what you do now. So for listeners who don't know you, who haven't listened to that other episode 2 years ago, just like, go on. Give us like your potted history.
Yeah, so I set up my coaching business actually nearly 4 years ago. So 4 years ago in April. I started out like you, actually, focusing on mums. I used to do confidence and career coaching for mums. After about a year, to 2017, I transitioned to doing more business. And that was pretty much because people coming to me for business coaching. And that was my background. And then, so for the last 3 years, I've been coaching people in business and helping them build and grow and get consistent revenue and consistent income. And that's really become where I've gone. I've done many different things, written a book, had my own podcast, flown all over the world, done speaking. So lots and lots of things that I've done. I think when I spoke to you 2 years ago, I was just about to go to Australia. So I went to Australia for a week then and was doing a lot of travel. And actually, it's really interesting because at that time I was like, I want to travel. I want to go to all these places and meet all these people. And this time last year, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be doing this travel. Like, it's not why I have my business. I'm away from my kids. I miss them. They miss me. They're an absolute nightmare when I get home. I spend my time jet lagged and exhausted. This version of success isn't actually what I want. So I think that's been really interesting as well. It's like the journey.
So that's interesting, isn't it? About you go on this journey with the business, you allow yourself to transition and pivot, which is something that so many people are actually really scared of doing. And then you get this kind of these outward things that look like it's success, where you can travel and you can go to these places, but it doesn't necessarily fit with your life. So tell us a little bit about that Australia trip then, and what you realised as a result of that.
I mean, it wasn't actually in Australia that I realised it. So I went to Australia in 2018, so the beginning of 2018. It was great. I was working with a fantastic coach who's amazing and still a very good friend of mine. But then I was travelling to LA quite a lot and Canada. And I was like, I remember being in LA this time last year, and I was in a room full of amazing, inspirational people, all of them 6 or 7 figure business owners, or 8 figure, actually, some of them. And I was like, it's great, but I'm exhausted. I'm jet lagged. And this may well be right for me in the future. But actually, even the size of the event, I was like, I prefer smaller things. I prefer more intimate things. And I don't want to travel. And then I was like, right, I'm not going to do any more travel. And I had a couple of things in the diary that I did. And then this year, I'm like, actually, I'm not going to go to the US or Canada for events at all. And I really thought that would have to be part of my path. But I was like, actually, I'm going to do it my way. And my way isn't about doing those trips because I've got really small children. And I think this is so important for all of us that we need to take a step back. And I'm not saying anything about anyone else who does it, but for me right now, that isn't part of what success looks like.
It's interesting you say that, because my children are a little bit older than yours, and yet still I make decisions about my business and which ways I'm going to grow, because I still want to be here when they get home from school. One of my children she's homeschooled, but she's online schooled, so she could travel with me, but I want to be around. And I traveled a lot in my previous work, and it doesn't mean to say I won't make the odd trip, but I actually not hold myself back because I don't see it in those terms, but I make decisions about the direction I'm going in based on actually how much I want to be here. And it is quite nice working in your comfy PJs and not traveling. I know it looks glamorous. It's way better for your Instagram feed, but
yeah, our Instagram would be much better, Anna, if we were like...
My Instagram I'd probably be a lot more out there with my Instagram if it wasn't just me sitting under a blanket at home with a cup of tea. It's probably a little bit more visually interesting. But we kind of digress a little bit there. What is it then for you now? Deciding that you're going to work with people in the UK, working a lot more closely with them. What impact has that had on your business and the decisions you take about how you're out there?
Do you know what? I don't think it's actually had an impact on my business at all. If I look at from when I made that decision in March 2019, I'm so bad at remembering dates, to now, like a year later, my business has grown and it feels more centered and more authentic. And I think there's this big thing that, like, this has been my big learning actually, that do what feels good for you, do what's aligned with you. It doesn't matter if the person next to you is doing something different or they've got a different business model or a different journey. For me, it's about creating a business that I like and that I'm inspired by. And I can do that here. Like, I can meet people in London. I can have like that life where I can pick up my kids and see them every day and do all of those things. And for me, that is so important. And I guess that maybe my business could be more successful and could be bigger and all of these things. But at the moment, my overarching goal is not to make loads of money in a short time. It's more to build a sustainable business. And I think that because I'm really clear about that, I connect with people who that is also their goal.
So one of the things we want to talk about today is this consistency.
Yes.
What do you think people get wrong about this?
Oh my gosh. So I think that sometimes with consistency, people think that consistency is only about social media. And they think that if they're being consistent at posting on social media, that everything else will follow. And social media is just one element of our business. It's not only consistency in our business, it's consistency with everything. So actually, I had a call with my nutritionist earlier and I had a really bad January because I was ill. And she's like, yeah, but you're ill. And I think that we have to kind of look at the patterns. Like, are we actually doing the things outside our business that give us that capacity to grow? Are we being consistent with our clients? Are we being consistent in our routines? And that doesn't mean getting up at 5 a.m. in the morning and going for a run and doing all of that. For most of us, that isn't something that we can sustain consistently. Are we consistently sending emails? Are we? And it's really looking at everything in our business, because often we expect that we're going to do one thing and then that's going to get us the results. But it isn't. It's often a build up over time, and we forget who's watching as well. So for me, it's about helping people build those consistent processes and systems so they can measure them, and then they can start getting consistent income, which most of my clients come from like corporate background where they got a salary. And so for them, that consistent income is a massive like goal. Yeah, it's there, isn't it? So I think it's really important to actually work with people and find out, okay, where are they not being consistent and how can we support them so they've got the right systems and processes in place. So it's about creating that structure to then create creativity and then to measure.
Tracking is so important.
Oh my God, it is. It's not sexy, but it's important.
The amount of people who don't have any idea about their list numbers, if they have a list, they don't know how often they're contacting their list, they don't know what their figures, their connections on social media are, they don't know their financial figures. And they literally have their head in the sand. And actually, until you're measuring and tracking, how can you expect to grow? Because you've got nothing to kind of go against.
So true, Anna. And actually, I spoke to somebody yesterday and they were saying that they've been doing all of this stuff and they looked at, okay, what did I get last year? And they realized that their success hadn't come from all of their social media. It had come actually from personal referrals. And so then they were like, oh, yeah, okay. So what can I do to get more personal referrals? And they had that click. And then they were like, right, if this activity isn't getting me the results, what can I do to change that activity or reduce it? So it's not saying that you just completely get rid of something, but again, I'm coming back to it, and I don't know why I'm talking about it a lot today, but there's this idea that if we're consistent on social media, then everything else will follow. But it'll only follow if we've got the right people with the right message in the right position. If we're being consistent and we've got the wrong audience or the wrong message, it's not going to work.
And I think this is the thing. So sometimes people say, well, I've posted every day on social media, and one, they think that that's enough just anyway. But what they've put out there isn't clear about what they do, how they help people, or anything geared towards their business that would actually attract someone. So it's not just consistency of posting, it's having that foresight about who really needs to hear your consistent message. And I can put my hand up and say, like, I've learned this the hard way, because I would say I spent at least the first 6 to 9 months in my business not having a clue and kind of just putting out generic memes and quotes and not having a clue, but knowing, I've got to post on social media and getting it completely wrong. But working out, it's got to be consistency of message to a consistent ideal client. And I know lots of people get really hung up on that because they don't know who they want to work with, because their work could help everybody.
Yes.
And yes, it can, particularly if in this coaching space, but that's not going to get you results in the first place. And there is a fear around that if you narrow down, that you're going to lose out in some way. But actually what people don't realise is often that's the key, because once you've got those first few clients, once you've managed to do that and people know you for something, then it's so much easier to pivot and go in different directions because you've got the solid foundations.
It's so true, Anna. And I hear that a lot as well. And I think it's idea that actually lots of people in our space, they want to help everybody, don't they? So they're like, oh, well, I can help everyone. I say to people when they say that, okay, write me a list of the people that you don't want to work with or any red flags. And when they start doing that, it starts to get a little bit of a penny drop as well. Because when they're saying, I'll work with anyone, I'm like, would you really? Would you actually really? Would you work with somebody who, I don't know, somebody who was racist? And they're like, no, of course I wouldn't. I'm like, oh, okay. So would you work with? And then that brain starts working. They're like, oh, okay. And there's always this, like, I don't know why I always have this example in my head, but if you were going for a wedding cake and you wanted a vegan wedding cake, would you go to a wedding cake shop that sold every sort of wedding cake? Or would you go to somebody who only did vegan cakes, who specialised? I know I go to the vegan one, so I just assume they had more experience because they specialised, which is, it's an assumption, isn't it?
Yeah, you do. And you think that they're going to be the best because that's what they focus on. And therefore, if in your head, someone is the best. And it's like, this filters down into so many things, though, like your search engine optimization. If you can niche that, if you can get all of that sorted, then your website's going to be more successful. Your blogs are going to be more successful. But people often don't see it.
No, they don't. And I think it's definitely fear, isn't it? Because at the beginning, when you're starting your business, you're like, let's be honest, most people are like, I just want a client. I really don't care who they are. I just want a client, and then it will feel like a business. And I think it does feel counterintuitive to people. So it is holding people's hand, because actually we've all been there. I mean, even when I started my business, like 4 years ago, I didn't have a niche. And I remember I literally was working with people through referrals, and I'd be like health coaching somebody, because I was like, well, coaching is just a skill. And then I'm like, I feel so out of my comfort zone. This is not the right thing for me. And so it was a little bit of a learning baptism of fire that I learned.
So now, Ruth, if I understand right, you're not helping people so much just as they're coming in. You're helping people more when they're at a certain income level. Is it an income level? Is that how you decide who you work with now? And then you help them to grow?
Do you know, I don't necessarily do it by income level. It's more that, so the majority of people come to me, so they want consistency, and they want consistent income and consistent clients. If they're in my mastermind, it's usually that they want to get to those 10K months. I'm sorry I mentioned it, because I know it's all over, but it is usually because they want to do that. And it's always because there's a reason behind that. So that might be that they're looking to replicate the income that they had before, or it might be, there's always some meaning behind it. So if they're coming to my mastermind, if they're coming into other levels, it might be they're looking at consistent 5K months, or even, some people in my academy and things, they want a consistent 1K month. And so there's no...
Let's be honest, a lot of people come into a business, and just to be able to have that for themselves and know they've created that is massive.
Oh my gosh. And especially, and I think that when I said 10K, I did say, because people are like 10K, 6-figure business, 7-figure business, blah, blah, blah. And I think that some people find that really, because it's so far away from where they are. And actually, some people don't want that. I've got an amazing client, and she wants to stay under the VAT threshold, because this is a business that she's doing until she retires. And she's like, I don't want to go through that additional paperwork. I'm really happy to be at this level. And I think that we have to be quite careful about judgments about others. Yeah, I help people scale, but that does mean different things to different people. And if somebody wants a consistent 2K month and they get that through working with me, I'm as happy for them as if someone wants a consistent 20K month.
Because I think as a coach, your work has to be bespoke. You have your systems and you have the ways that you work and the things you want to teach people, but you always have to be dealing with the person in front of you. Yes, Definitely. You've got a wealth of experience and knowledge and education, but everyone's situation is unique. Everybody has their own blocks, their own mindset problems. And like you say, everyone wants a different lifestyle. We're not all aiming for exactly the same thing. I just read this amazing article. I think I found it on Facebook. I really had too much to do. So what did I do? I scrolled on my phone.
Yeah, of course. I do that all the time.
About a chap. And he runs a company called Gravity. So he might be really well known and I just don't realise it. But he decided, he was a young millionaire. So at 31, he was running a really, really big successful company. He was a multimillionaire and he had loads of people working for him. And one day he ended up speaking to one of the junior assistants, and she broke down on him and saying, I can't afford to buy food this month. I can't afford my rent this month. And he said it got me doing a lot of thinking. There's me driving this Tesla and there's my staff who are doing all the work for me with nothing. So he made this decision that he was going to cut anyone high up including him, cut everyone's pay, but raise everybody's pay. So he had this minimum $70,000 salary across his entire company. And he said he got absolutely slated for it. I don't even know where this is going, Ruth. So just but he said he got absolutely slated because he was doing something that other people weren't doing, but it felt so in line with him. And he said the interesting thing is that he now sees people, like Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk, and he's like, I am just as capable as them. And I know there's a bit of me that thinks I would like all that money and I would like all that glamour. But actually, when I had it, it didn't feel right. And this way, I'm much happier. Yeah, that was the point. That was where I was going with that.
I love that, though. Like that,
where you're at and what feels
for me. It's kind of, I've got a team and I've had various people in my team over the last 4 years. Part of having a business for me is not only about me, it's like that bigger picture. And it's not like I'm going to earn the mega bucks and I'm going to give you minimum wage. Like for me, that's just not ethical. And I think that comes back to that sustainable business. So I love what he does. Like in Denmark, they have a thing, don't they, that I think, and probably there's going to be Danish people listening to me who tell me I've got this wrong, but I think it is the top person in the business can only earn 10 times the bottom person.
Oh,
And when you think, I mean, that could be 17 grand and 170 grand.
yeah.
So it is a big difference. But when you think of some of the businesses in the UK, it's 17 grand and 17 million or something, and that is just so unequal. Why do we need to be that unequal?
No, it is really interesting. And I know that you help a lot of people who come from a corporate background. That's interesting because obviously I've come from an entertainment background. Not everybody, but a lot of people I work with are creatives or are emerging leaders. That's often how I talk about the people that I work with, who kind of want the spotlight but feel uncomfortable with their spotlight. What do you think are the challenges of someone coming from that corporate background?
Oh my gosh. So I think confidence. So I think that a lot of people that I work with, they've been really successful in their corporate background. So if they're in corporate, they've been like mid to senior level, or they've been the same in public sector. And so they've had responsibility, they've had a team, they've had all of this stuff. And then they go into entrepreneurship and they don't have any of that. And I think it's a confidence of, they're consciously incompetent. And because of that, they lack confidence at the beginning, even though they've got all the skills and all the experience, because they don't know this new world. They imagine that it's going to be really different. So they're consciously incompetent, and that impacts their confidence and the way that they put themselves out there. And I think they have these massive visibility blocks. Even though they're visible at work, it's different. And it's that difference. I think they struggle with that.
But there's a massive learning curve in this online space. I mean, I experienced it. That is a whole new world. And actually, although there are processes and mechanics to how you can do it and strategies, it's growing and evolving all of the time. So you kind of got to have your, I want to say foot on the pedal, but that's completely not what I mean. You've got to have your ear to the ground to keep learning and keep developing. And I think that feeling that this is something I experienced, I knew I was capable of in another environment. So why, when I was trying to start this new thing, did I not know how to do it straight away? And that was very, very frustrating. So what for you then? What are your plans as you develop and change your business? Can you see where you're going yet? Or are you happy to ride with it?
Yeah, definitely. So I think I keep taking a step and like, okay, what do I really love in my business? And I love like my masterminds. So at the moment, I have 2 mastermind groups. And I'm going to probably keep that with 10 people in. I love that small connection and progress. So I'm going to keep that. And then I'm going to be keeping my academy, which is like a membership, and then having online courses in that business. And I've actually started a second business, which is about training people to be coaches and teaching people coaching skills. And I think that business, it's complementary, but it kind of goes back to my teaching days. And I've done lots and lots of coach training. And so I want to have that as another arm of my business, but it's actually a separate business. So
it's challenging, isn't it? Because the coaching space is unregulated. So you have people who just decide, I've done a few courses, I'm just going to teach this now. And there's no way to prevent that from happening. And it's not to say that if you aren't really good at something, you can't teach it. But in an industry where the majority of people are highly qualified, are highly skilled, it's very difficult as a consumer, as a punter, to know, who do I go with? How do I work this stuff out? Because it's just hard to know. So I think the more trained coaches who are qualified and know what they're doing, the better for the industry. I do think that's really important.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that I think there's so much people don't actually really know about the difference between a coach and a mentor. So there's amazing mentors out there. I've worked with some brilliant mentors. However, the generic term is coach. And I think that is a problem, that the consumers don't really understand the market.
So tell us, from your point of view then, Ruth, what's the difference? Where's the line?
So a mentor is going to guide you using their experience, whereas a coach is going to help you to find the answers within yourself. So a mentor is more directive. A coach is not directive. And actually, I've done both, and I do both. And I imagine that you probably do both as well.
And sometimes those things really cross over, because a lot of that, once you have the skill, some of that's quite intuitive.
Yes.
Once you know. But there is a difference. And it's knowing, actually, when you go into a conversation, what result does someone want here? And what's going to be the best thing for them to be told and demonstrated, or for them to realise that they have this within them.
And actually, it's always more powerful when people come to it themselves. Always. People often, and I bet you that you have this as well, Anna, they say, just tell me what to do. but you can tell them what to do and they don't do it. And the reason they don't do
water, but you can't make it drink.
Oh my gosh. But actually, for me, the interesting thing is why don't they do it? And that's where you go into their beliefs and their confidence and their
always something behind it.
And it's so much more interesting.
Yeah, fascinating how people think. And for me, that's why for me, you can know all the business stuff. And don't get me wrong, I spend a lot of time making sure that I learn and that I grow. You do need that stuff. But if you have a mental block on how much you can earn, how much you can get out there, what people think of you, whether you deserve it, whether you can become an author, whether you have the right to do that. I find it a lot with podcasting. People really know they want to have a podcast, but they're actually too scared to do it.
Yeah.
If you've got all those mindset blocks, then there's only so much success that you're going to allow yourself to have. It's fascinating what people do and how they tie themselves up in knots.
And I'm sure that we've both been there as well.
Oh God, absolutely. And I think that's what makes it, so I'm running a challenge at the moment, and it's been amazing to, even at that remote distance through a Facebook group, to experience people unraveling in front of you, and that confidence that comes with those moments of realization. That's really what my work means to me. It's really about those blocks. But equally, I'm an ambitious woman. I like to go after some hard targets, but whatever I choose in my business has to fit, like we were talking at the beginning, it has to fit with my family and how I want to live my life. And if it doesn't, then I'm going to switch off. And so then it becomes about the consistency piece we're talking about. You have to know what it is you want for your business, what you really want it to look like, and why that really matters. Because otherwise you won't do the consistent things like getting your systems in place, sending out the emails, being on social media, doing Facebook Lives. You just won't, because there's no meaning behind it for you.
Yeah. And that's so important. And actually, with the consistency as well, a big part of it is about your mindset. Because if you're not feeling good about yourself, it's so hard to motivate yourself to do these things. And again, it's just another learning, isn't it? Okay, why am I not doing this? And sometimes it's, I see people all the time that and I bet you do as well, they take on somebody else's goal. So the 10K month is a really good example. So other people around them will say, I want a 10K month. And they're like, oh, I want a 10K month. They don't actually think about what that's going to mean in terms of clients and business model and all of the other things.
How much they might have to work to get there.
Yeah. And then they don't get it.
And they might actually feel if they do get there, what are they actually going to do with it?
Yeah.
So, even if you get it then feels really awkward, like you shouldn't have it.
Yeah.
So Ruth, then, if people want to find out a little bit more about you, where's the best place to go?
Oh my gosh, I'm so lucky because I've got an unusual name like you. So it's Ruth Kudzi, Kudzi. So my website is Ruth Kudzi, my Instagram is Ruth Kudzi, my LinkedIn is Ruth Kudzi, and my Facebook page is Ruth Kudzi 2.
Oh.
No idea.
Oh.
I think that was because I made a mistake. We're always learning, aren't we, Anna?
Always learning. But things like that you can't undo, and it's really frustrating.
You can't undo, no.
And you have your own podcast. So I know you briefly mentioned it earlier. So let listeners know. So if you want to...
So I've got my own podcast.
Episode to another.
Yeah, I've got my own podcast called The Path to Success. I think I did about 40 episodes last year, and it was very much interviewing people about their journeys. That has gone on hold. Now I'm going to be launching a new podcast in April to see what it's going to be called about, what it's going to be called. And that's going to be much more around kind of coaching conversations and difficult conversations, and much more around the mindset piece, actually, that we just spoke about.
Yeah, great. So to wrap up then, Ruth, if you were to give someone advice about getting visible, about getting themselves out there, what 3 pieces of advice would you give someone?
First of all, when you're thinking about getting visible, think about where your ideal client is, because there's no point being visible if they're not there. Second of all, do something that challenges you but doesn't take you too far out of your comfort zone. So if video terrifies you, start with audio or start with writing. And the third thing, you know what I'm going to say, be consistent. So if you're saying, okay, I'm going to write a blog every week, or I'm going to do a podcast every week, do a podcast every week. That comes from Amy Porterfield, by the way. I did steal that from her. She says 1 piece of original content every week and you're sorted. And it's done pretty well for her, hasn't it?
I actually think a podcast in many ways makes you have that consistency, because you think, I can't not, when people are expecting to listen, in a way that for me, writing a blog doesn't make me make sure in quite the same way. I feel like a responsibility, and I've been podcasting for about 2.5 years now. So I know that content has to be done. So that has to be top of the priority list. And it's actually made me just be much more consistent. I think it's a good way to build. But you're
so do a podcast. I know a lady who's quite good at helping people with that. I think she's called Anna.
We do know that. You can go find out about the podcastmembership.com. But that's So Ruth, and also you mentioned your book. So we're going to make sure that is in the show notes for everybody as well.
Thank you
so yeah, great to have you on. Thank you so much. And
really nice to catch up.
Let's catch up in 2 years' time and see where we are then.
Yeah.
All right,
thank you very much, Anna. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Entrepreneurs Get Visible. To get your free checklist on how to raise your profile and to find out about our community, go to annaparkernaples.co.uk/get visible.